My friends, tonight I want to tell you a story. A story not just about a wedding, not just about a bride or a groom, but about something much deeper, about human dignity, respect, and the power of seeing one another as equals. At a grand celebration, a bride, adorned in wealth and pride, mocked a poor waiter. To her, he was invisible, beneath her, unworthy of notice. But then, in front of everyone, the groom stood tall, placed his hand on the waiter's shoulder, and said one word that shattered every barrier of arrogance. Brother. That single word carried the weight of humanity. It reminded everyone in that room that a title, a suit, a bank account, or a dress does not define our worth. What defines us is how we treat one another, whether we look down or whether we lift up. And isn't that the truth of life? Time and again, history shows us that greatness comes not from those who hoard power, but from those who use it to elevate others. Ordinary people have proven this. The farmer who works soon up to sundown to feed not only his children, but his entire community. The teacher in a small town who believes in her students long before they believe in themselves. The nurse who works the night shift, sacrificing sleep so others may wake up healthy. These are not stories of wealth or fame. They are stories of perseverance, humility, and hope. They are reminders that every one of us, no matter where we stand today, has the power to rise, to change, and to inspire. But here is the call we must choose. We can choose cynicism, division, and pride, or we can choose respect, unity, and responsibility. We can choose to mock, or we can choose to say, brother, sister, friend. The world is waiting for each of us to rise above smallness, to build bridges where others build walls, to see possibilities where others see limits. So tonight, I ask you, believe in a future where kindness is power, where respect is currency, where perseverance is victory. Carry this belief into your homes, into your work, into every encounter. And remember, greatness is not reserved for the chosen few. It is forged in the hearts of those who dare to care, who dare to keep going, and who dare to see humanity in one another. And when the moment comes, when someone looks down on another, be the one who stands up and says, "No, that is my brother. That is my sister." My friends, there are moments in life when the world seems to stop, when a single act or a single word carries the weight of 1,000 lessons. We often underestimate language, yet words have built nations, sparked revolutions, healed broken hearts, and torn down walls that seemed impossible to move. Words can wound, yes, but words can also awaken. They can remind us of truths we've forgotten, of dignity that has been denied, and of the humanity that binds us all together. Picture the wedding hall that day. A place of beauty, of light, of celebration. Guests dressed in their finest, music echoing, laughter filling the air. And there, at the center, stood a bride, a woman radiant, powerful in her own way, surrounded by wealth and pride. And then, in the corner of her eye, she saw the poor waiter. To her, he was insignificant, an invisible figure meant only to serve, to stand quietly, to be forgotten when the night was done. And with a smirk, with words laced in arrogance, she mocked him. For a moment, the room froze. The kind of silence that makes the air heavy, that makes you wonder if anyone will step forward, if anyone will speak truth into the space where cruelty has just been unleashed. And then it happened. The groom, with calm strength, walked toward the very man who had been humiliated. He placed a hand on his shoulder and, with a voice steady and firm, he said one word that shook the hall. Brother. That was it. Just one word. But that word was enough to destroy the pride that had just filled the room. It was enough to restore dignity to the man who had been mocked. It was enough to remind everyone present that respect cannot be bought and humanity cannot be erased by arrogance. One word. That's all it took. Now think about this. How many times in our own lives have we been in rooms where silence was the easy option? How many times have we seen someone treated unfairly, diminished, mocked, or ignored, and said nothing? How many times have we told ourselves, "It's not my fight, it's not my place"? And yet, what if in that moment we chose a single word, a word that affirms, a word that uplifts, a word that declares, "You matter, you belong, you are not alone"? The truth is, language is the most powerful tool we carry every day. We don't need reaches, titles, or status to use it. The poorest among us can still speak words of love, and the most broken among us can still speak words of hope. A parent saying to their child, "I believe in you." A teacher whispering to a struggling student, "You are capable." A stranger smiling at someone who feels invisible and saying, "I see you." These are not speeches that fill stadiums. They are not declarations carved in history books. But they are words that change lives. And let me tell you, lives have been saved by words. The soldier on the battlefield, hearing his comrade say, "I've got you." The patient in the hospital bed, holding on because the nurse said, "You're stronger than you think." The lonely soul ready to give up, only to hear a friend say, "Don't quit, I need you here." That is the power of one word. The power to heal, the power to restore, the power to transform despair into possibility. We live in a world where words are often cheapened. Social media floods us with noise, insults, comparisons, and judgment. But when the right word is spoken at the right time, it cuts through the noise like light through darkness. It doesn't take paragraphs. It doesn't take speeches. Sometimes it only takes one word. Brother, sister, friend, leader, champion, fighter. These are words that remind people of who they are, even when the world tries to convince them otherwise. And here's the challenge. It is not just about the word itself, but about the courage to speak it. The groom could have stayed silent. He could have laughed with the crowd. He could have let the moment pass. But he didn't. He stepped forward, and in doing so, he reminded everyone in that room of a truth they could not ignore. Dignity is not negotiable. Humanity is not for sale. Respect is not optional. And every one of us carries that same responsibility. Every one of us has been given the gift of language, and with it, the power to either wound or to heal. The choice is ours. The opportunity is ours. My friends, we live in a world that often confuses wealth with worth. Too many times, we see people measured by the size of their house, the brand of their clothes, or the balance in their bank account. Society teaches us to admire the rich and overlook the poor, to applaud the powerful and dismiss the ordinary. But let us pause and ask ourselves, is that truly the measure of a human being? Does the weight of gold ever outweigh the weight of character? Does the value of a diamond ever surpass the value of dignity? Consider again the scene at that wedding hall. The bride, adorned in jewels and luxury, laughed at the poor waiter who carried her food. To her, wealth was proof of superiority. She believed money gave her the right to belittle, that her status made her untouchable. Yet, in that very moment, the groom shattered her illusion. By calling the waiter brother, he reminded everyone watching that worth does not come from what you wear or what you own, but from who you are. Wealth can be inherited, but worth must be earned. Wealth can be lost overnight, but worth cannot be taken from you. Wealth can divide us into classes, but worth unites us as human beings. History has proven this again and again. The world does not remember the rich merchants who mocked the poor, but it remembers those who lifted humanity with courage and compassion. Think about the farmer who owns no land, but tills the soil with his bare hands so his children can eat. He may have no wealth to show the world, but his worth is immeasurable. Think about the mother who works 2 jobs, not for fame, not for applause, but to keep her family together. She may never walk a red carpet, but she walks with the dignity of sacrifice. Think about the soldier who stands guard in the cold night, unseen and unsung, so the rest of us may sleep in peace. His paycheck may be modest, but his worth is beyond measure. This is the lesson we must reclaim. Wealth can make life comfortable, yes, but worth is what makes life meaningful. And too often, the ones who hold the most worth are not the ones who sit in mansions or fly in private jets. They are the ones who rise early to labor, who give without expecting, who love without condition, who endure without recognition. The world has always celebrated the illusion of wealth, but in the quiet corners of history, it is worth that has carried nations forward. The civil rights leaders who stood for equality did not march with riches, they marched with conviction. The scientists who unlocked cures did not sit in palaces, they worked in small labs, driven not by profit but by purpose. The teachers who shaped generations were not millionaires, they were visionaries who believed that knowledge could transform lives. And so, my friends, the real question for us is not how much wealth we can accumulate, but how much worth we can create. Ask yourself, will people remember what you owned, or will they remember how you made them feel? Will they remember your possessions, or will they remember your principles? Will they remember your riches, or will they remember your respect? The tragedy of our age is that too many chase wealth while neglecting worth. They climb ladders that lead nowhere, they sacrifice values for vanity, and in the end, they realize too late that money cannot buy meaning. But there is another way. A life built on worth is a life that can't not be diminished. When you speak with kindness, when you stand for justice, when you honor those around you, you are building something that no thief can steal and no market can crash. And we must never forget, wealth is temporary, but worth is eternal. Wealth belongs to the few, but worth belongs to anyone willing to live with integrity. Wealth may impress strangers, but worth will inspire generations. Wealth may put your name in headlines, but worth will put your legacy in hearts. That is why when the groom placed his hand on the waiter's shoulder and said, "Brother," he wasn't just speaking to one man. He was speaking to the entire room, to every person who had ever believed the lie that money defines who we are. He was saying, no, wealth is not the measure of humanity. Worth is, dignity is, character is. My friends, there is a truth that runs deeper than culture, deeper than wealth, deeper than power. It is the truth that every human being is born with dignity. Not some of us. Not the wealthy few. Not the powerful elite. Every single person, no matter their status, no matter their background, no matter the color of their skin or the language of their tongue, carries within them the unshakable right to be treated with respect. But how often do we forget this? How often do we walk past the janitor in the hallway without even making eye contact, as if their work does not matter? How often do we speak to the cashier with impatience, as though their time is less valuable than ours? How often do we look down on the ones who serve us, forgetting that their humanity is equal to our own? The story of the rich bride mocking the poor waiter is not just a moment at a wedding. It is a reflection of the world we live in, a world where too many people are dismissed, ignored, belittled, simply because they stand on the other side of the social divide. And yet, when the groom called the waiter brother, he declared a truth that cannot be silenced. Dignity does not bow to wealth, and respect is not a privilege reserved for the few. Dignity is the foundation of community. It is the thread that binds us together. Without it, we are divided into classes and categories, always measuring who is above and who is below. With it, we see each other as equals, as partners in the journey of life. When dignity is honored, the workplace is transformed, the classroom is uplifted, the family is strengthened, and society itself becomes more just. Think of the construction worker who rises before dawn, whose hands are calloused from building the homes and offices where others will live and thrive. Too often, his labor is overlooked, his contribution taken for granted. But without him, cities do not rise. Without him, families do not find shelter. Does he not deserve the same dignity as the executive who will later sit in the office he built? Think of the hospital janitor who cleans the floor late at night. Patients and visitors may never know their name. They may walk past without a word. But that janitor is the unseen guardian of health, preventing disease, protecting lives. Does their uniform make them less worthy of respect? Or is their service a testament to courage we too rarely acknowledge? And think of the waiter, the very one who was mocked. His task may be to serve food, but his presence is not less human. His soul is not less valuable. His dreams are not less important. Every plate he carries, every glass he refills, is an act of labor deserving of gratitude, not mockery. This is what dignity means. It is not about what you do, but about who you are. And who you are is sacred. Who you are cannot be reduced to a paycheck or a position. Who you are cannot be mocked out of existence. The danger is when societies forget this principle. When dignity is denied, injustice grows. When dignity is denied, oppression rises. When dignity is denied, humanity itself begins to crumble. History is filled with tragedies born out of forgetting that every life is equal, every voice deserves to be heard, every person is worthy of respect. But history also shows us the triumphs that come when dignity is restored. When Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of a dream, it was a dream rooted in dignity. That children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. When Nelson Mandela walked free after 27 years in prison, he did not seek vengeance. He sought dignity for his people, and even for those who had oppressed them. When ordinary citizens march, protest, or stand up to injustice, they are declaring that human dignity cannot be silenced. And this responsibility is not for leaders alone. It belongs to us, each one of us, in our daily interactions. It is in the words we speak to the stranger, in the patience we show to the tired worker, in the recognition we give to those whose efforts are unseen. It is in the courage to treat every person, no matter how the world labels them, as someone who matters. For dignity is not charity. It is not something we hand out when we feel generous. It is the birthright of every human being. It is the quiet strength that binds a family, the moral foundation that builds a community, the sacred truth that upholds a nation. My friends, when we think of greatness, our minds often go to images of power and glory. We imagine leaders standing on grand stages, champions holding trophies, or billionaires shaping industries. The world teaches us to believe that greatness is loud, that it announces itself with riches, with applause, with authority. But true greatness is rarely like that. True greatness is quiet, often unseen, and it begins not with pride but with humility. Look back at the story of the wedding. The bride believed her wealth made her great. She wore her pride like a crown, mocking those she thought beneath her. To her, greatness was defined by status, by luxury, by being above others. But in that same moment, the groom revealed something deeper. By calling the waiter, brother, he showed that humility, not arrogance, is where greatness truly lives. Humility is not weakness. It is not about lowering yourself or denying your worth. Humility is strength under control. It is the quiet confidence that you do not need to stand on someone else to stand tall. It is the wisdom of knowing that lifting another person up does not bring you down. It brings you higher. Think about some of the greatest figures in history. Mahatma Gandhi walked among his people, not as a ruler but as a servant, wearing the same simple cloth as the poor. And yet, his humility inspired millions to rise against oppression without violence. Mother Teresa served the sick and dying in the slums of Calcutta, not seeking fame, but offering dignity to those who had been forgotten. Her humility lit a flame of compassion across the world. Even in modern times, the leaders we remember most fondly are not those who ruled with an iron fist, but those who listened, who served, who walked with their people rather than above them. Humility transforms power. It makes leadership meaningful, relationships stronger, and communities more united. When a leader is humble, people trust them. When a parent is humble, children learn respect. When a teacher is humble, students feel valued. When an employer is humble, workers feel dignity in their labor. Humility has the power to change how we see one another, to break down walls of arrogance and build bridges of understanding. Now think about the opposite, pride without humility. We have seen it time and again. The rich man who mocks the poor, believing wealth makes him invincible. The powerful politician who ignores the voices of the people, believing authority makes him untouchable. The celebrity who looks down on fans, forgetting it is those very people who placed them on the stage. Pride without humility leads to downfall, always. Because arrogance blinds us to truth. It makes us forget that we are human, that we are fragile, that we depend on one another. Greatness in humility is different. It is the strength of the athlete who, after winning, thanks their teammates and coaches, knowing victory was not theirs alone. It is the wisdom of the CEO who listens to the janitor's ideas with the same respect as the board of directors, because value is not confined to titles. It is the courage of the soldier who risks their life not for medals, but for the person next to them, because service is greater than recognition. And here is the paradox: humility makes people greater than pride ever could. The world may celebrate arrogance for a season, but it remembers humility for generations. People may be impressed by wealth for a moment, but they are inspired by humility for a lifetime. Humility leaves legacies. Humility builds movements. Humility transforms nations. At its core, humility is about perspective. It is the understanding that no matter how high we climb, we are never too high to serve. No matter how much we achieve, we are never too great to listen. No matter how far we go, we are never too powerful to reach back and lift someone else. Greatness is not found in standing above others, but in standing with them. It is not found in mocking the weak, but in defending them. It is not found in prideful boasting, but in humble service. That is the greatness the world needs, not a greatness built on wealth and arrogance, but a greatness born of humility and respect. My friends, when we hear the word hero, many of us imagine grand figures: soldiers on battlefields, presidents in offices of power, athletes in stadiums, or scientists making breakthroughs that change the world. But the truth is, most heroes never stand on stages, never appear in headlines, and never receive applause from the masses. Most heroes live quiet lives unseen and uncelebrated, yet their courage, sacrifice, and perseverance shape the very foundation of our societies. These are the ordinary heroes, the men and women who rise each day not because the world cheers for them, but because their families, their communities, and their responsibilities depend on it. They may never wear capes, but their strength is no less extraordinary. They may never be called famous, but their impact is far greater than fame could measure. Think of the farmer. He wakes before the sun, his hands rough, his back bent, his days long. He fights against weather, against soil, against seasons that do not always cooperate. Yet he does not stop. He plants, he waters, he harvests, not for glory, but so that others may eat. In every grain of rice, in every loaf of bread, in every piece of fruit that sustains us, there is the quiet heroism of farmers who rarely hear a thank you. Think of the teacher. She stands in front of her students, day after day, giving not only knowledge but belief. She sees in children what they do not yet see in themselves. She carries their dreams when they are too fragile to carry them alone. She stays late, preparing lessons, grading papers, worrying about the ones who seem lost. She may never earn a fortune, but she invests in something far greater, the future. Every doctor, every engineer, every leader, every dreamer begins with a teacher who believed they could be more. Think of the nurse. She works long shifts, her feet aching, her eyes tired, yet she answers the call every time. She comforts the frightened, she calms the families, she holds the hand of the dying so they are not alone. She may not be remembered in history books, but for the patients whose lives she touches, she is a guardian angel in human form. And think of the parent. The father who takes the night shift so his children can go to school. The mother who goes without so her family does not have to. The grandmother who raises her grandchildren when life takes unexpected turns. These sacrifices rarely make the news, but they are acts of heroism as great as any. Because building a family, shaping a generation, holding a household together in the face of hardship, that is courage of the highest kind. Ordinary heroes walk among us every day. The bus driver who ensures children arrive safely to school. The janitor who keeps public spaces clean and healthy, often invisible to those who pass by. The volunteer who shows up to serve food to the hungry, not for recognition, but because compassion demands it. They may not carry weapons, wear crowns, or hold microphones, but they carry something greater: responsibility, humility, and the will to keep going. And here's the beauty of it. Heroism is not reserved for a chosen few. It lives in each of us. Every act of kindness, every sacrifice for another, every decision to keep moving when quitting would be easier. These are seeds of heroism. The child who chooses to stand up against a bully, the neighbor who helps rebuild after a storm, the stranger who steps in to protect someone in danger. These are ordinary moments that reveal extraordinary courage. The world teaches us to look up to the famous, to idolize the rich, to celebrate those in the spotlight. But if we look closely, if we open our eyes, we see that the true backbone of every society has always been ordinary heroes. They are the ones who endure silently, who carry burdens without complaint, who make small decisions every day that add up to extraordinary impact. Ordinary heroes remind us of something essential. Greatness is not in what you have, but in what you give. Not in how high you climb, but in how many you lift along the way. Not in being celebrated, but in being faithful to the call of service, however humble, however unnoticed. My friends, too often in our world, respect is mistaken for weakness. People think that to respect others is to lower yourself, to give away your power, to stand smaller so someone else may stand taller. But this is a lie. Respect is not a weakness. Respect is strength. It is one of the most powerful forces we can carry within us, and it has the ability to transform not only relationships but entire communities, nations, and generations. Respect does not diminish us. It elevates us. It tells the world that we are confident enough in who we are that we do not need to tear others down to feel tall. It shows that we are wise enough to recognize dignity in others, even when the world overlooks them. And most importantly, respect builds bridges where arrogance builds walls. Think again of the wedding story. The bride mocked the poor waiter, believing her wealth gave her power. But in that moment, her mockery revealed weakness, not strength. Her laughter exposed insecurity, not greatness. And then the groom, with one word, brother, showed what true strength looks like. By offering respect to the man everyone else had dismissed, he became greater than the room itself. His respect gave him a power arrogance could never match. Respect is strength because it multiplies. When you respect someone, you give them courage. You remind them that they are seen, that they matter, that they belong. And when people feel respected, they rise higher, they give more, they become stronger themselves. Respect plants seeds of strength in others, and those seeds always return to you in ways you may not expect. Think of the workplace. A boss who rules with fear may gain obedience, but a boss who leads with respect will gain loyalty. Workers may follow orders for a paycheck, but they will give their best effort for a leader who sees their worth. Think of families. A parent who respects their children, listening, guiding, treating them as individuals with voices, raises children who grow into confident adults. But a parent who dismisses their children, who silences them, who mocks their dreams, raises adults who struggle to believe in themselves. Think of communities. A society built on respect is one where neighbors trust each other, where strangers help each other, where differences are not weapons but opportunities to learn. But when respect is absent, division grows, conflict deepens, and unity crumbles. Respect is not just kindness, it is a form of strength that holds entire nations together. And let us not forget, respect is not selective. It cannot be given only to those we admire or agree with. Respect must extend to all people, rich or poor, powerful or powerless, familiar or foreign. It is easy to respect those above us, but the true test of strength is respecting those society places below us. That is why the groom's word, brother, was so powerful. It was not spoken to a man of influence. It was spoken to a waiter, someone the world dismissed. That kind of respect reveals real strength. History gives us countless examples. Leaders who respected their people became legends, while those who disrespected them faded into tyranny and disgrace. Abraham Lincoln was respected because he respected even his opponents, treating them with dignity in the midst of conflict. Nelson Mandela, after decades of imprisonment, showed respect to his captors and enemies, choosing reconciliation over revenge. That respect did not weaken him, it made him unbreakable. Respect also has the power to change the smallest of moments. The stranger who smiles and says, "Thank you," to the cashier, the student who listens when a teacher speaks, the passenger who acknowledges the bus driver. These small acts of respect cost nothing, but they carry enormous power. They remind us that humanity is not a hierarchy, but a shared journey. Respect is strength because it requires discipline. It requires us to silence arrogance, to resist the urge to belittle, to rise above pride. It requires us to look at another human being, not through the lens of status, but through the lens of equality. And it requires courage, because in a world obsessed with showing power, it takes bravery to show humility. The world will tell you that power comes from control, from wealth, from titles. But real power comes from respect. It is the power that makes enemies shake hands, the power that makes strangers into allies, the power that makes communities into families. Respect is not weakness. It is the quiet strength that stands when pride falls, the unseen force that builds what arrogance destroys. My friends, life will always test us. Every day we are faced with challenges, disappointments, victories, and defeats. But there is one thing no one can ever take from us: the power to choose our attitude. Circumstances may be beyond our control, but how we respond, how we carry ourselves, how we decide to see the world, that is a choice that belongs to us alone. The bride in our story chose arrogance. She looked at the poor waiter and chose to mock, to belittle, to elevate herself by trying to diminish someone else. But the groom chose differently. He chose to respect, to uplift, to call the man brother. And, in that moment, two very different attitudes stood side by side. One revealed weakness, the other revealed strength. One left the room smaller, the other left the room greater. And both came down to a choice. Attitude is the lens through which we see life. Two people can walk through the same storm, yet one emerges bitter, while the other emerges stronger. Two people can face the same obstacle, yet one gives up and the other finds a way through. The difference is not always in the situation. It is in the choice of attitude. History is filled with men and women who faced unimaginable struggles but chose an attitude that changed everything. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the horrors of the concentration camps during the Holocaust, wrote that even when every freedom is taken from us, there remains one final freedom, the freedom to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. Surrounded by suffering, stripped of dignity, he still found purpose, still found meaning, still chose to see himself not as a victim, but as a soul with the power to endure. That choice gave him strength when others fell into despair. Think of Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years, he could have chosen anger, vengeance, hatred. But when he finally walked free, he chose reconciliation. He chose forgiveness. He chose unity. That attitude not only freed him, it freed an entire nation from the chains of bitterness. And think of the everyday people around us. The mother who works 2 jobs, exhausted but still smiling at her children, teaching them that hardship does not mean hopelessness. The student who struggles but chooses to keep studying, refusing to surrender to failure. The worker who is overlooked, disrespected, yet chooses to carry themselves with dignity instead of bitterness. These choices of attitude may not make headlines, but they shape lives, they build futures, they define legacies. Our attitude shapes how others see us too. A leader who chooses optimism inspires hope in their people. A teacher who chooses patience sparks confidence in their students. A friend who chooses encouragement can lift someone from the edge of despair. The attitude we choose does not only affect our own journey, it affects everyone around us. But make no mistake, the choice is not always easy. Negativity is tempting. Bitterness comes naturally. It is easier to blame than to believe, easier to complain than to persevere. But every time we choose bitterness, we give away our power. Every time we choose arrogance, we shrink the world around us. Every time we choose cynicism, we close the door on possibility. The groom in the story showed us that attitude is not just personal, it is public, it is contagious. When he called the waiter brother, his attitude of respect and humility did not stay within him. It rippled through the entire room. It silenced mockery. It inspired reflection. It changed the atmosphere. That is the power of attitude. It spreads, it multiplies, it transforms environments. And here is the truth: no matter your background, no matter your situation, no matter the obstacles in front of you, you always have a choice. You may not choose the storm, but you can choose how to walk through it. You may not choose the insult, but you can choose whether to answer it with anger or with dignity. You may not choose the burden, but you can choose to carry it with perseverance instead of defeat. This is why the choice of attitude is so powerful. It is the foundation upon which resilience is built. It is the difference between living as a victim of circumstances or as a victor over them. And it is within the grasp of every single one of us, every single day, my friends. Every society has invisible lines. Lines that tell us who belongs where, who is respected, and who is dismissed. These are the barriers of class, race, status, and background. They are drawn by pride, enforced by prejudice, and passed down through generations. But every so often, someone dares to step across those lines, and in doing so, they remind us of a truth more powerful than division: that we are all human, that we are all worthy, and that no barrier can withstand the force of genuine respect. The story of the rich bride and the poor waiter is not just about arrogance. It is about those barriers. She looked at him and saw only his position, his uniform, his lack of wealth. To her, he was less. But the groom, with one word, brother, shattered that barrier. In that moment, he declared that no wealth, no ceremony, no title could erase the dignity of another soul. That one word broke the chain of division that had been forged by society's expectations. Social barriers have existed throughout history. Once, people said kings were chosen by the heavens and common men had no voice. Once, people believed education belonged only to the elite, while the poor were destined to remain in ignorance. Once, the color of skin or the place of birth determined a person's destiny. But over and over again, brave souls have stepped forward and proved those barriers false. Think of Rosa Parks, a woman who sat on a bus seat reserved for whites and, by refusing to move, broke a barrier that had stood for centuries. Think of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl who was told girls should not be educated, yet she raised her voice and broke a barrier that silenced millions. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., who stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and spoke of a dream where children of all races could play together, breaking the barrier of hate with the vision of love. But these stories are not just history lessons. They are reminders. Barriers do not fall on their own. They are dismantled when individuals choose to see beyond them. The groom could have stayed silent. He could have ignored the insult. But he chose to break the barrier publicly, to stand on the side of dignity, to call the poor waiter brother, and declare equality in a place where inequality was expected. Breaking barriers is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is as small as listening to someone who feels unheard. Sometimes it is inviting the outsider into the circle. Sometimes it is speaking up when someone is mocked or dismissed. Every time we cross those invisible lines, we weaken the power they hold. And let us not forget, barriers exist not only between people but within ourselves. We build walls of self-doubt, telling ourselves we are not worthy, not capable, not good enough. These inner barriers are just as destructive as the outer ones. When we believe those lies, we limit our own future. But just as we must break the barriers of society, we must also break the barriers within, choosing to believe in our potential, to honor our own worth, to step boldly into the roles we were created to play. The truth is, barriers are only as strong as the fear that sustains them. When fear is replaced by courage, when arrogance is replaced by humility, when prejudice is replaced by empathy, those barriers crumble. The moment we choose to call someone brother or sister, the divisions of wealth, race, and status lose their hold. The moment we see humanity before hierarchy, love before pride, and connection before separation, the lines fade. And so the call to us is clear: we are not here to preserve the walls that divide us. We are here to tear them down. We are not here to uphold the arrogance of the rich over the poor, or the powerful over the powerless. We are here to level the ground, to remind the world that every human being carries the same flame of dignity. Every act of kindness, every word of respect, every stand for justice is another hammer blow against the barriers that keep us apart, my friends. When we speak of change, we often imagine it as a sudden event, a lightning strike, a miracle, a dramatic transformation. But real change, the kind that reshapes lives and societies, rarely comes in a single moment. It comes through perseverance. It comes through the slow, steady, determined steps of those who refuse to quit, even when the world tells them they should. The poor waiter in our story represents more than just service, he represents perseverance. Day after day, he shows up. Perhaps his hands are tired from long hours. Perhaps his dreams are delayed by circumstances. Perhaps people like the bride mock him, look down on him, or see him as invisible. Yet he continues to stand, continues to work, continues to move forward with quiet strength. And when the groom calls him brother, it is not just a word, it is recognition of a perseverance that the world cannot erase. Think about the stories of history. Perseverance has always been the root of transformation. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, never abandoning the belief that South Africa could be free. His perseverance became the foundation of a nation's rebirth. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before finally inventing the light bulb, and his perseverance lit the world. Harriet Tubman, risking her life over and over, persevered through danger and fear to lead enslaved men and women to freedom. These people were not superhuman. They were ordinary men and women who refused to stop. Their greatness was not born in comfort but in perseverance. And because they endured, they inspired change that outlasted their lifetimes. Perseverance does not only live in the grand stories of history. It lives in the people around us. The single mother working 2 jobs to feed her children. The student studying late into the night, determined to create a better future. The soldier training under impossible conditions, driven not by glory but by duty. The doctor in a small village clinic, serving patients without resources but never without compassion. These are the unseen heroes of perseverance, and though their names may never appear in history books, they are shaping change every day. But perseverance is not easy. It is forged in struggle. It demands sacrifice. It requires walking through rejection, through failure, through nights when hope feels like a faint whisper. It is in those moments that perseverance matters most, because change is always preceded by resistance. Before the world accepts transformation, it will test your resolve. Before the breakthrough comes, the barriers will rise higher, and only those who keep moving, who refuse to bow to despair, will see the new dawn. Perseverance also inspires those who witness it. When others see you endure, they find strength in your example. When a child watches their parent work tirelessly, without giving up, that child learns resilience. When a community sees a leader push through hardship without abandoning the mission, they learn faith. When a society sees ordinary people endure the impossible, it realizes that nothing is truly impossible. Perseverance is contagious. It ignites courage in those who might otherwise give up. And perseverance is not only about personal success, it is about creating ripples of change. Every time you persevere, you prove to others that change is worth pursuing. You plant seeds in their minds that determination is stronger than doubt. You show that failure is not the end, but part of the journey. And those seeds can grow into movements, into revolutions, into a future that looks nothing like the past. This is why perseverance is so powerful. It bridges the gap between struggle and triumph. It carries us from mockery to respect, from rejection to recognition, from invisibility to influence. The poor waiter mocked in silence becomes the brother acknowledged in front of all, not because he was born rich or powerful, but because he persevered through the trials of his life without surrendering his dignity. So when the road feels long, when the weight feels unbearable, when the world says you are not enough, remember that perseverance is the very thing that will transform not only your story, but the story of those who watch you. Remember that change is not a gift waiting at the end of an easy path. It is the reward of those who walk through difficulty, carrying hope like a torch in the darkness, refusing to let it go no matter how fierce the storm, my friends. Every age of humanity has faced the same challenge. Will we choose to divide ourselves, or will we rise together in unity? The story of the rich bride and the poor waiter is not just a tale of arrogance versus humility. It is a mirror held up to society. One person chose mockery and division, while another chose brotherhood and unity. And in that single choice, a new truth was revealed. Division belittles us, but unity elevates us. Think of how often division has slowed our progress. Nations have fractured because of class, race, religion, or wealth. Families have been torn apart by pride and misunderstanding. Communities have collapsed when suspicion replaced trust. Division has always been the easiest path because it feeds on fear, on jealousy, on the illusion that one group is greater than another. But history shows us that division has never led to greatness. It has only led to ruin. Unity, however, has always been the birthplace of transformation. When people come together, when they look past labels and titles, when they choose to see each other not as enemies but as allies, the impossible becomes possible. A divided hand cannot hold much, but a united fist can move mountains. Consider the great movements of our world. The civil rights movement in America was not the work of a single leader, but the unity of thousands of ordinary men and women who marched, who sang, who stood arm in arm against injustice. They came from different backgrounds, different faiths, different towns, but together they carried one message: we are stronger together. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not achieved by division, but by unity. Citizens gathering, demanding change, their voices merging into one unstoppable chorus. And unity does not only live in history books. We see it in the everyday resilience of communities. After disasters, when storms tear down homes or fires destroy neighborhoods, it is not division that rebuilds, it is unity. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers donating blood, people opening their doors to those they've never met. These acts remind us that unity is not an abstract idea, it is a living force that sustains humanity in its darkest hours. But unity begins with a choice. It begins with one person refusing to mock, refusing to belittle, refusing to see others as less. It begins with one person daring to say, brother, or sister. In a world that insists on hierarchy and separation, when the groom in our story called the waiter brother, he shattered the invisible walls of division. In that moment, wealth and poverty, bride and servant, privilege and humility disappeared. What remained was a recognition of shared humanity, and that recognition is the seed of true unity. Unity also demands humility. To unite with others, we must be willing to listen, to learn, to admit that we do not have all the answers. Division thrives on arrogance, on the belief that my way is the only way, that my people are better than yours, that my truth is absolute. But unity thrives on respect. It thrives on curiosity. It thrives on the courage to say, even if we are different, we belong to the same human family. And unity does not erase differences. It celebrates them. Just as a symphony needs violins, drums, horns, and flutes to create music, humanity needs its diversity to create progress. A world where everyone is the same would be dull and fragile, but a world where differences unite toward a common goal becomes unbreakable. The strength of unity is not uniformity, It is harmony. We must also understand that unity is not passive, it is active. It is not enough to say we believe in togetherness. We must live it. Unity is in the way we treat a stranger with kindness, the way we defend someone who is mocked, the way we lift someone who has fallen, the way we refuse to allow prejudice to go unchecked. Each action, small or large, builds the bridge that connects us. The truth is, division isolates us, but unity multiplies us. One person can make a difference, but united people can change the world. One candle can give light, but united candles can burn away the darkness. One voice can speak truth, but united voices can echo across generations. And this is why unity matters. It is the force that takes ordinary people and empowers them to accomplish extraordinary things, not because they are the same, but because they are together, my friends. Every one of us carries within us a responsibility that is greater than personal success, greater than wealth, greater than reputation. It is the responsibility to lift others, to see someone stumbling and not just walk past, to see someone mocked and not stay silent, to see someone in need and not turn away. Because greatness is never measured by what you accomplish alone. It is measured by how many lives you elevate along the way. Think about the story of the poor waiter mocked by the bride. In that moment, everyone in the room had a choice. They could stay quiet, watch the humiliation, pretend it wasn't their business. That is what most people do in life. They step back, hoping someone else will act. But the groom didn't remain silent. He stepped forward and called the waiter, brother. With one act of courage, he lifted a man who was being pushed down, and in that act, he revealed to everyone present that dignity is not given by wealth, it is given by recognition, respect, and humanity. Responsibility to lift others is not only for leaders, presidents, or billionaires. It belongs to the teacher who believes in the quiet student no one notices. It belongs to the neighbor who checks in on the elderly widow next door. It belongs to the friend who encourages someone struggling in silence. It belongs to the worker who defends a colleague when others spread gossip. Every single one of us has the power to lift, because lifting others does not always require money or authority. It requires heart, awareness, and the willingness to act. We live in a world that often tells us to focus on ourselves. Build your career. Secure your wealth. Protect your image. And while there is nothing wrong with ambition, the danger lies in forgetting the people around us. Because the truth is, your success means little if you stand on top of a mountain alone. The real measure of success is whether you built steps for others to climb behind you. Think of history's greatest leaders, thinkers, and changemakers. What makes them unforgettable is not what they gained for themselves, but what they gave to others. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. could have lived a comfortable life as a preacher, but he chose the harder path of lifting the oppressed. Mother Teresa could have stayed in safety, but she chose the streets of Calcutta to lift the dying and forgotten. Nelson Mandela could have chosen revenge after decades in prison, but instead he chose forgiveness to lift an entire nation out of hatred. These people remind us that lifting others is not optional. It is the duty of every human being who believes in the dignity of life. And yet, lifting others does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it is as simple as listening to someone who feels unheard. Sometimes it is telling a child, "I believe in you," when the world tells them they won't succeed. Sometimes it is offering guidance, mentorship, or even a smile in a moment of despair. These small acts of lifting ripple outward in ways we cannot always see. A word of encouragement today might give birth to an inventor tomorrow. A hand extended today might save a life that changes the world. But responsibility also requires courage. It is not always easy to stand up for someone when others are mocking them. It is not always easy to defend the weak when the strong are pressing down. It is not always easy to share when scarcity whispers to hold on tightly. Responsibility is heavy, but it is in carrying that weight that we discover our true strength. We must also understand that lifting others is not charity, it is justice. It is not about seeing ourselves as saviors, but about recognizing that humanity rises or falls together. When you lift another, you are not just helping them, you are strengthening the whole community. When a child is educated, the entire society gains. When a worker is respected, the entire workplace thrives. When the poor are empowered, the entire nation moves forward. To lift others is not to lose, it is to multiply. And so, the responsibility is clear. We cannot wait for someone else to take the first step. We cannot wait for the wealthy, the powerful, or the influential to fix what is broken. Each of us has the power, and each of us has the duty. The person mocked, the person overlooked, the person ignored. They are waiting not for speeches or promises, but for action. They are waiting for someone who will stand beside them and say, "You are not alone. You matter. You belong." My friends, there are moments in life when the world feels heavy. We turn on the news and see division, hatred, and cruelty. We walk through our communities and hear stories of hardship, injustice, and despair. And sometimes it is easy to believe that hope is a fragile illusion, that humanity is broken beyond repair. But if we look closer, if we pay attention not only to the noise of destruction, but to the quiet rhythm of everyday life, we will find something different. We will find hope in humanity. Hope is not abstract. It is not a vague wish whispered in the darkness. Hope is alive in the actions of people who choose kindness when cruelty would be easier. It is alive in the hearts of those who stand up for justice even when they risk being alone. Hope is present when a child shares food with a friend who has none. It is present when a stranger stops to help a person they will never see again. These are not random acts. They are evidence that humanity still carries within it the capacity to heal, to build, to rise together. Think of the groom who called the poor waiter brother after the bride mocked him. That single act was more than a defense. It was a declaration of hope. It said to the world, we are more than wealth and status. We are bound by something greater, human dignity. In that moment, humanity showed itself not in the bride's arrogance, but in the groom's courage, in his refusal to let pride erase compassion. That is hope in action, hope made visible. History gives us countless examples of this same truth. In times of war, ordinary families hid strangers in their homes at the risk of their own lives. In times of disaster, neighbors formed human chains to rescue others from floods or fires. In times of oppression, voices rose from silence, refusing to bow to fear, and those voices inspired revolutions of freedom. Time and again, humanity has proven that when darkness rises, so does the light of hope through ordinary people who refuse to let it die. Hope in humanity does not demand perfection. It does not deny the existence of cruelty or suffering. Instead, it insists that cruelty and suffering do not get the final word. Hope says that even when hate is loud, love is stronger. Hope says that even when greed dominates, generosity still breaks through. Hope says that even when despair whispers, courage answers back. To believe in hope is not to close our eyes to reality. It is to open our eyes wider and see the quiet revolutions happening all around us. You can see hope in the young woman who works 3 jobs and still finds time to tutor kids in her neighborhood. You can see hope in the nurse who holds the hand of a dying patient when their family cannot be there. You can see hope in the teacher who spends their own money to buy supplies for students who cannot afford them. These acts may never make headlines, but they make history in the lives they touch. And hope is contagious. One act of kindness inspires another. One word of encouragement plants the seed for resilience. One gesture of solidarity creates a chain that stretches farther than we can measure. This is how societies are rebuilt, how broken systems are healed, through the simple yet powerful choice of people who decide to keep believing in each other. But hope in humanity is also a responsibility. It calls on us not just to admire those who do good, but to become those who do good. It is not enough to watch from the sidelines and say, I believe things will get better. We must be the ones who make them better. Every choice matters. The way you treat the cashier, the way you speak to the janitor, the way you respond to someone who stumbles, these are not small moments, they are defining moments of who we are as a people. Hope does not live in speeches alone, it lives in action. It lives when we see beyond divisions of race, class, religion, or status, and recognize that underneath all of it, we share the same human heartbeat. It lives when we dare to forgive, when we dare to include, when we dare to stand with the vulnerable instead of stepping over them, and when we carry hope in humanity, we pass it forward to the next generation. A child who grows up seeing kindness will believe in kindness. A young person who experiences respect will learn to give respect. A community that practices empathy will shape leaders who lead with empathy. This is how cycles of despair are broken and cycles of hope are born. My friends, we have seen that true greatness is not measured by titles, wealth, or power, but by the courage to honor human dignity, the strength to persevere, and the choice to live with compassion. The stories of ordinary people rising above hardship remind us that every moment is an opportunity to choose unity over division, respect over arrogance, and hope over despair. The future we dream of is not built by chance. It is built by us, through the daily decisions we make to lift each other higher. So let us carry forward the belief that no act of kindness is too small, no voice of justice is too quiet, and no heart is too broken to heal. Together, with hope and humanity as our guide, we can build a world where every person stands not in isolation, but in the strength of a shared brotherhood and sisterhood that no force on earth can break.